York has never seen a marriage like this fall apart. For years, George and Bertha Russell stood at the top of the city. They owned the biggest mansion, they controlled the biggest deals, and they decided who was allowed inside high society and who was left outside in the cold. People feared them. People wanted to be them. But this season, something breaks. Not with a scream, not with a scandal in the papers, but with one quiet decision that changes everything. Bertha Russell, the woman who built an empire next to her husband, is done sharing the throne. This is the story of the day she walked away. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to understand what George and Bertha actually built together. They didn't just get married for love or money, they built a partnership. George handled business, railroads, steel, deals that shaped the whole country. Bertha handled something just as powerful. She handled New York society itself. She fought her way into rooms that didn't want her. She forced the old money families to accept new money families. She turned the Russell name into something that mattered, something that opened doors. Together, they weren't just rich, they were unstoppable. Every scene of this marriage showed to people who trusted each other completely. George backed Bertha's social plans even when they seemed impossible. Bertha backed George's business risks even when they seemed dangerous. That trust is what made them different from every other couple in this world. Other husbands controlled their wives. Other wives stayed quiet and let their husbands make every choice. But George and Bertha ruled as equals. And that equality is exactly what made them so powerful, and exactly what made them so easy to break. Because the moment one of them makes a big decision without the other, the whole foundation shakes. And that is exactly what happens this season. George makes a choice. A choice he thinks is small. A choice about business, about family, about protecting what they built. He doesn't ask Bertha. He doesn't include her. He just decides, the way powerful men are used to deciding. But Bertha isn't just any wife. She is the woman who helped build this empire brick by brick, favor by favor, dinner party by dinner party. So when she finds out, it doesn't feel small to her at all. It feels like betrayal. It feels like George forgot who actually made him powerful in the first place. This season opens with that one moment, the one decision that George thought would pass quietly, the one decision that instead becomes the beginning of the end. Here's the part nobody expected. Bertha doesn't scream. She doesn't throw a vase across the room or cause a scene in front of the servants. That would be too easy, and Bertha Russell has never done anything the easy way. Instead, she goes quiet, and in this world, quiet is far more dangerous than loud. When George realizes what he did, when he sees the look on her face at dinner, he expects an argument. He expects tears, maybe even shouting behind closed doors like other couples in their circle. But Bertha gives him nothing. She keeps hosting her parties. She keeps smiling at the right people. She keeps running the house exactly the way she always has. On the outside, nothing looks different at all. But underneath, she is already 3 steps ahead of him. While George thinks the moment has passed, Bertha is quietly making calls. She is quietly moving pieces. She is quietly deciding what her life looks like without leaning on his approval for every single move. This is what makes her different from every other wife in New York society. She was trained her whole life to smile through pain, to host a perfect dinner even on her worst day. And now she uses that exact skill against the man who taught her the value of control in the first place. The servants start to notice small things first. A locked drawer that used to stay open. Letters that go out without George's knowledge. A meeting scheduled during his usual afternoon routine, time so he won't find out until it's already done. Nobody says a word out loud, but the staff can feel it, the way people can always feel tension before it becomes a full storm. Larry notices his mother seems calmer than usual, and that calm worries him more than any fight ever could. Gladys senses something shifting in the house, but can't quite name it. And George, still confident, still sure he made the right call, has no idea that his wife isn't hurt anymore. She has already moved past hurt. She is planning. And in the world of the Gilded Age, a woman who plans quietly is far more powerful than a woman who fights loudly. Because by the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's already too late to stop it. Then comes the dinner that changes everything. On the surface, it looks like any other night in the Russell mansion, candles lit, silver, polished. The kind of meal meant to remind everyone in that dining room exactly who holds the power in New York. George sits at the head of the table, feeling good about himself, still convinced this small decision he made without Bertha will simply fade into the background like every other minor disagreement married people have. He raises a glass. He talks about the future, about new deals, about the family name growing even stronger. And that is exactly the moment Bertha chooses to speak. Not with anger, not with tears. She speaks with the same calm, controlled voice she uses when she is arranging seating charts for the biggest party of the season, except this time the words cut far deeper than any social insult ever could. She tells him, in front of the people who matter most, that she knows exactly what he did. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. The silence in the room does the work for her. Every guest at that table understands what they are witnessing, a woman calmly taking back her power in front of the exact audience her husband spent years trying to impress. George's face changes first. Confusion, then embarrassment, then something closer to fear. Because he suddenly understands. His wife did not forget, she simply waited for the perfect moment. The moment where the damage would be impossible to hide or explain away. This is the turning point the whole episode has been building toward. Bertha isn't asking for an apology anymore. She isn't looking for George to fix what he broke. She is showing him, and everyone watching, that she no longer needs his permission to make her next move. Later that night, behind closed doors, the real conversation happens, the one without an audience, the one where years of unspoken resentment finally come out. George tries to explain himself. He tries to remind her of everything they built together, hoping loyalty to the past will be enough to hold the present together. But Bertha has already stopped listening to explanations. She has started listening to herself instead. And what she hears is a voice telling her she deserves more than being an afterthought in decisions that affect her own life and her own family's future. Morning comes, and the house feels different. Not loud, not chaotic, just different. The way a room feels different after a storm has already passed through it. Bertha stands in front of her mirror, and for the first time this season, she isn't dressing for George's approval or for the judgment of New York society. She is dressing for herself. The staff move around her quietly, sensing this is not a normal day, though nobody dares to ask what is actually happening. Trunks appear in the hallway. Not many, just enough to tell you this decision was planned carefully, not made in a moment of anger. Bertha has never been a woman who acts without thinking 3 steps ahead, and this moment proves it once again. George finds her before she leaves, and this is where the episode gives us the moment fans have been waiting for since the very first scene. He asks her to stay, not with pride, but with something close to desperation, because for the first time in their marriage, he understands he might actually lose her. Bertha looks at him the way she has looked at hundreds of people who tried to underestimate her over the years, calm, steady, and completely unafraid. She tells him this isn't about the one decision he made without her. It was never really about that. It's about every quiet moment where he assumed she would simply go along with whatever he chose, because that is what wives are supposed to do in his world. She built her own power the hard way, and she refuses to shrink it down to make him comfortable again. She walks past him, out through the same grand doors that once welcomed New York's most powerful families into their home. Except this time she is the one leaving, and she is the one in control of where she goes next. The final shot lingers on. George standing alone in that massive, empty hallway, the same hallway that used to represent everything they built together, now representing everything he might lose. The screen fades to black, and the words appear. Bertha Russell built an empire beside her husband, Now she is ready to build one without him. The Gilded Age Season 4, coming soon.